Well, there has been fresh fighting on the Iranian front overnight and this morning, and Kuwait has suspended flights after an Iranian attack on their international airport, which has killed one person. For the latest on this, we're going to head straight to Middle East correspondent Jody Cohen this time. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning, Tracy. So this is a significant development. Kuwait has said that Iran fired 30 ballistic missiles and drones, killing one person and injuring at least 63 passengers and workers at Kuwait International Airport. And Kuwait has reserved the right to take appropriate measures in response. The US military said that it launched strikes on an Iranian military center in response to Iranian missiles fired not only at Kuwait, but also at Bahrain. That Central Command downed multiple drones and missiles, and no American personnel or assets were harmed. CENTCOM said it struck Qeshm Island in response to attempted Iranian attacks on Tuesday, and that the US disabled a ship sailing towards Karg Island, attempting to break America's blockade of Iranian ports. Now, this comes after Iran claims that talks for a deal have stalled. However, President Trump said that's fake news, that talks are ongoing. He said that Iran had already agreed not to have nuclear weapons and indicated that he would be prepared to meet with Iran's supreme leader. Now, here's Secretary Rubio commenting on the talks yesterday before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Take a listen.
There is the prospect before us, which could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, it could happen next week, that for the first time, certainly in my memory, they have agreed to negotiate aspects of their nuclear program that just a month ago, or just a year ago, they were refusing to even mention, much less enter into discussions about. That is not a guarantee that ultimately it will lead to a deal that's acceptable to the Senate or acceptable to the American people.
Meanwhile, the Israel Defense Forces issued evacuation warnings for 3 towns in South Lebanon ahead of striking Iran's proxy Hezbollah. This comes after multiple Hezbollah missiles and drones aimed at Israeli communities over the past couple of days, including today, despite a renewed ceasefire. At the same time, the US says that progress has been made in the Israel-Lebanon peace talks in Washington and that these talks are continuing today. Reporting live from Israel, Jody Cohen, Newsmax.
All right, Jody, thank you for that great reporting. Okay, for more, we're going to bring in our panel now. Former Deputy Assistant to President Trump, John Elliott, along with retired U.S. Marine Colonel, attorney, and author Grant Newsham. Gentlemen, great to be with you both this morning. John, I want to start with you and get your reaction to these Iranian drone strikes hitting Kuwait International Airport. What does this signal to you?
Well, it signals that Iran still has a very strong capability militarily, and that's something that is a real problem for getting to a deal, because what they're shown, they're really on the ropes in the sense that President Trump's absolutely right that we have done a great job about degrading their capability, but they still have, it's very tough for the U.S. or for any adversary for that matter who's superior militarily, whether it's Israel or anyone else, the U.S. to completely eliminate their very robust military capability. So even if you posit that, let's say we have destroyed 90% of their long-range assets, they still have drones, they still in fact have ballistic missiles that they know and Israel knows that can strike Israel and also can strike deep in at least to Eastern Europe. And so this is a real problem because it takes so much. It probably would take boots on the ground to really end the whole drone threat. So until there's a deal, and we can talk about the deal in a moment, but it just shows that they have a strong capability. And when you have someone killed in Kuwait and you've got, they haven't even started a re-attack of the salination plants, or rather the desalination plants that are across the Gulf that are really critical to the economies over there. So this is a robust capability, and President Trump and Secretary Rubio they're very smart, and they're looking at this and they're negotiating, and I hope that they come to, we all hope that they come to a good deal, because this remains a strong threat.
Yeah, Colonel, I want to go to you next. John mentioning this is a real threat, this is a concern. Also, boots on the ground. Do you see this happening, sending boots on the ground troops?
I don't see the introduction of ground troops taking place here. The Iranian threat, of course, it still exists. Certainly, they've got ballistic missiles, they have drones to some level. They have a lot less than they had. But keep in mind, the ceasefire that was supposed to last 2 weeks has gone on for over 6 weeks. And in warfare, when you've got momentum going, as we did with the initial strikes, you want to keep it up. And that puts the opponent on the back foot, and it makes it much harder for him to respond. And here we've given them really 6 weeks to collect their wits, to get their defenses, such as they are, back in order, and to launch these kind of attacks that you can see the effect that it's having, particularly on people who want the war to end. So it's no surprise that they're doing this. So 6 weeks is a long time in warfare, and also one might say that they're stringing us out in the hopes for a deal. We seem so fixed on that we'll keep extending the breathing space that we're giving them.
Yeah, John, let me ask you this question. A lot of people have said that they're kind of kicking the can down the road, stringing this along, as the colonel said, to kind of bide out time to the midterms and how this might impact the president. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. The colonel's 100% correct, is that their playbook has, as always, Iran's playbook for the last close to 40 years has been, whenever they're checked on a threat that they have to the rest of the world, they delay, and it's always say, well, we're agreeing to agree to maybe sometime in the future agree to start talking about our nuclear capability and what we're going to do about that. They did that with Obama. Obama actually bought that. And so nothing was achieved in that JCPOA because it was just, once again, a situation of delay. And I hope that we go in there. I think President Reagan said, with respect to the Soviet Union, trust but verify. In the case of Iran, it is distrust and triple verify. And I think President Trump and Marco Rubio know that very well.
Yeah, speaking of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, he spoke yesterday. And this is a little bit about what he had to say. Let's take a listen.
Our foreign policy is one that's solely focused on the national interest of the United States of America, on the defense of our country, both its military defense and our security, but also our economic security and the vibrancy of our economy, our sovereignty, and our future. We believe that America should lead the world, and I believe that we are, and we'll have a very good story to tell about that. American leadership, however, should always be on behalf of the American interests. I say this because I think over a period of time in our foreign policy, we lost focus on that. The reality of it is that our foreign policy, first and foremost, must always be what is in the national interest of the United States of America.
All right, and Secretary of State speaking yesterday on Capitol Hill. Colonel, really quickly, almost out of time, but I want to get your thoughts on that. Do you agree with the Secretary?
Yes, I do. And I think most people in America would also, at least Americans in flyover country. They're the ones who provide the troops, the young people to go serve on America's behalf. And it's quite right, rightly stated by Secretary Rubio. And one last point I always point out here with what we're doing to Iran is we have not hit their transport infrastructure, their communications network, their energy infrastructures as well. You'd think we have with all of the damage we've done, but those are still intact. It's allowing them to build up their defenses, their resources. But Secretary Rubio is once again speaking very clearly and very correctly.
Yeah, definitely laying it all out. Well, Colonel Grant Newsham, John Elliott, thank you both. And thank you both for your service. I know you're both Marines. Pleasure to be with you both.
Thank you, Semper Fi.